What is up, YouTube? Welcome to PanFro Games. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing Dragon's Dogma 2 on the PC. And Dragon Dogma 2 is a very interesting and incredibly weird game for weirdos. And I'm just one of those weirdos. And I think more people should play this game. Now, don't be intimidated by the 2 in the title. You don't need to play the first game whatsoever. This is more of a redo slash reboot of the franchise, and the first game was apparently only 40% complete according to the director, so the second game is the complete package. Now let's begin and talk about the world of Dragon's Dogma. Now this is going to be an open world action RPG, but it doesn't have all of the same things that you're normally used to. Like, there is no real focus on fast travel in this game. The world, compensates for that, as is a much more smaller, but it's pretty dense open world in general. But something I like about this world a lot is that it's always ever living, and the game really wants you to live within this universe. Talk to the NPCs to get your quests, because there are no quest markers in the game. There's like, oh, this guy has a quest for me. Like, no, you need to actually go ahead, talk to characters, and get that. So it's much more of an old school style of gameplay than what most gamers are used to at the moment. Now, this game does have tons of random events, as it is a ever living and breathing world. Like, out of nowhere, you can just be taking an ox cart to get to one town, and normally that is like a method of fast travel, but in the middle of that fast travel, you could just get attacked by an ogre at the middle of the road, destroy the cart, and then you're gonna have to walk the rest of the way. Now, that's not really a big detriment walking. No, it does take your time for sure. However, there's gonna be plenty of enemies along the way that you can defeat, get EXP for, but also you can find treasure chests. And yes, you'll be going through these paths quite often throughout the game. And there's quite a few caves to find. So every time you go through, it's like, hey, maybe I can actually, explore this path now. And oh, I found a cave. There's some really good loot here. And the game wants you to keep exploring and finding new things, because not every little class that you play is going to have a way to actually deal with some of the open world areas that you find, or trying to get to certain location. Now let's talk about the gameplay of this game. So Dragon's Dogma 2 is a game where you pick a different class, and there's 10 different vocations in the game. And the cool thing about this game compared to other games is that the vocations are incredibly different ways to play the game. They're also vastly different. So you start off with 4 classes. You got the thief, you get the fighter, you get the mage, and you get the archer, and they all play very differently. And there's 6 more you get throughout the story, and they're all very cool. Like the thief, in my opinion, very OP, great early game class. And what makes it different from the other classes is it has an actual dodge. None of these other classes have a dodge. Some of them have a block. Some of them have a way to make your spells cast a little bit faster. Some of them have a way to stun your enemies. But this class has a dodge. No other class really has a dodge, which is pretty cool. And this is the class that has high mobility. So, oh, I can't get up there. Well, I can like jump up on the wall and then do a backflip, and then use my concussive step to jump off the air and then get to that spot. So different classes are going to be good at different things. And some are going to do damage, more damage than the other classes, which is pretty interesting too. And some of them are spellcasters. Like, we have the sorcerer, who does a massive amount of damage. However, it takes time to charge up your magical spells. So you want to make a team around that character that will allow you to get those big hits off. And if you do land those big hits, you will be able to get like a one-shot kill on most mobs. Now, something that's really cool about this game is this game does not have like a mana system or anything like that. It's all based on your skills. There is no skill cooldown. There's just a stamina bar, and your regular and heavy attacks do not take away from that stamina bar. The only thing that lowers it is the use of your skills and you sprinting. So the game wants you to use a lot of your skills and pop off, and you don't really have to focus too much on stamina. I just would not be running around too often all the time, because that's what's going to really eat up your stamina. Luckily, when you're in like the cities and things like that, your stamina does not get taken away, which is pretty cool. Now, another weird thing about this game is there's no actual lock-on system for most classes. So you're going to be playing unlocked for a lot of it, but it somehow does work, and it didn't bother me once I got used to that type of combat. But it is like definitely a choice, because you could definitely hit like the R3 but on controller and normally lock on. It's not really used for anything. So another just weird decision about this game, and it's a series of weird decisions in general about this game. Now, speaking of the gameplay, besides your character that you can highly customize and give like different items to, stats and equipment, and change their vocations, and when you get your vocations, you get in more passives and things like that. You also have a pawn, and the pawn is a huge part of this game. So the pawn is going to be your number one ally, and you'll always have your main pawn with you. This is a second character that follows you around, and you can do the exact same customization that you can do to yourself with this pawn. So you can give them vocation. My first one was an archer, and with that archer, I loaded them up with good gear, gave them a bunch of different arrows, and then eventually when I maxed their archer class, I was able to freely switch them over to another class, and now I made them a sorcerer. But because I made them a sorcerer, it's like, okay, now I want to change up my team comp a little bit, because not only do you have your main pawn, you have 2 additional pawns that you can get from online play. So you go online or just walking through the open world, you'll find pawns. Now, if you find a pawn, you can see the stats on them. You can see the different equipment. You can see what moves they'll have. And if you like them, you can recruit them. And the cool thing about the pawn is this pawn will have information that you may not know about. Let's say there's a cave over there on the left, but I don't know there's a cave over there. The pawn may say, hey, I know there's a cave over here. I may know there's a treasure chest over here, something like that. And you can hit up on the D-pad, say, okay, go, I'm going to follow you, and you follow them, and they'll show you exactly where it is. And the cool thing is your own pawn will be used in other people's open worlds as well. And when that pawn returns to you, you'll still have a copy of them, but they'll still go off and do their own thing as well in someone's open world. So you don't have to worry about not having your main pawn at all. But when they come back and finish their service with some other player character, they'll be like, oh, hey, I learned a bunch of things. Let's go do X, Y, and Z, which is really sick, honestly. And they get experience, they get items as well from doing that. You can also get some money as well. So the pawn system is really awesome and unique, and you definitely want your pawn to be recruited a lot. So there's a lot of emphasis on making your pawn great, so more people will end up using it, giving them reviews, and that just like snowballs into a lot more XP and a greater experience in general for you. Now, something that does bother me a lot is definitely the performance. Mostly in the towns, the performance is not great. So that's definitely a patch that they said they're going to be fixing soon. But as for now, it definitely dips. And the game in general does not run well above 30 FPS. You get like 30 to 40 FPS. No 60 FPS out there. So hopefully they can make the game run at 60 at some point. But even at a really powerful PC like mine, it can't even get close to 60. But hopefully they can patch this at some point. And lastly, there is no new way to like make a new game, which is weird. They said they're going to add that soon, but that is definitely a weird thing that they didn't add. So there's a lot of weird, questionable decisions in this game, but the gameplay overall, absolutely phenomenal. I love it. It's just so cool to go through the different vocations, and they just play essentially as like 10 different games because they're just all so different, and you're free to change the vocations whenever you want, which what I love about that for sure. You can go to town, change it. There is no downsides to it. Your stats immediately adjust to what level you would be at that vocation, and the game wants you to master vocations and then switch them over. So I think the big thing is the vocation system is very cool. The monsters you fight are incredibly cool, from the ogres, the cyclopses, even the chimeras, and things like that are all very cool. And of course the dragons you fight, which are more the tougher bosses. Those are very epic fights. You can jump on them, you can climb on them, hit their weak spots, and then try to destroy them. And if you do, you get some rare loot and of course a lot of experience. Now I do think another downside is after about plus 20 hours into the game now, I am getting a little bit wary on the enemy diversity. I just killed way too many goblins, wolves, skeletons, and humans, and there's not enough diversity on the basic enemies. And even some of the more boss enemies like cyclopses and ogres, you end up just seeing them a little bit too much, and I was hoping to get more of those bigger monsters with some diversity. At least they're like mixing in a few more like minotaurs, there's griffins, and now I'm starting to see a little bit more dragons to it as well. But even then, there's only been a couple of rare enemies I've seen exclusively in caves, and I wish some of those more would come out into the wild, so more interactions we can have with them. And there is like a sort of secret level system to enemies as well. They tend to scale a little bit, but I guess to a certain point you start just blowing them out of the water, and then you got to move on from like the main capital area into the second map of the game. But overall, I think this is a fun, great game. I do think is a little bit flawed in some of the game design processes, and also the lack of enemy diversity, and in general the performance isn't the best. But overall, it's a fun time. You're gonna have a lot of great Dragon Dogma moments that can only happen in a game like this. And overall, I think it's a must-buy game, and I'll give this an 8.5 out of 10 on the PanFro game scale. There you have it, guys. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. I really appreciate it. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out, and have a good one.